Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Amazing Studios Production Podcast. I'm Peter Scheibner.
I'm Cliff Bumgardner.
We've got kind of a special episode today. It's going to be a little bit of a departure from our normal format because we want to let you in on kind of the behind the scenes of what we're doing here. And we're going to break down a recent music video we just finished, we just wrapped on. And we want to let you guys kind of inside of Cliff and I's conversation of what worked and what didn't work. Mm-hmm. So
Absolutely.
This is going to be fun. I don't know yet what we're going to be fully fleshing out because Cliff and I have not discussed this yet. I know I have my thoughts. I'm sure Cliff has his thoughts, so there may be some revelations, so stay tuned.
We're doing it live.
Yeah, this is an actual conversation that we will have after every single project. We just want to let you guys in on this one because we think it's one worth watching. First off, if you haven't yet seen the music video Ghost by Transit Vocal Band, go to YouTube, watch the music video. There's a behind the scenes video. You may want to watch that too, and then come back and finish this podcast because you're going to want to. It's going to help if you see the finished product to understand some of the things we're talking about today.
If you're on YouTube, we'll have links in the description. If you're on iTunes, you can go on YouTube and type in Transit Ghost.
Yes, and hopefully it'll be the top hit.
Yeah, hopefully so.
All right, so let's give a little bit of background
Yes.
On how we got this project. We were contacted by Transit, I guess at this point it's about a month ago.
Well, and you guys, we have had a relationship with Carl Taylor in the past.
Yeah, Carl Taylor, who's the head of Liquid Fifth. If you have any audio needs, like if you want to record music or do a radio broadcast, anything like that, I would highly recommend.
Or a podcast.
We should. No.
We don't want to drive.
No, he's out in Durham, North Carolina, which is a solid 40 minutes from us, and we're so lazy.
To give people an idea, in North Carolina, everything is generally so close together that a 40-minute drive is like insane to us.
Yeah, so those of you from the Northeast who drive 40 minutes to get anywhere,
yeah,
we're going to just ignore you. So Carl is a good partner here of the studio and a good friend of ours. Contacted us. He's in the Transit Vocal Band. He's a member. And he said, hey, we want to make a music video. We have no money. So basically what we're thinking is we could get a couple of shots of us down by a river and the rest of it we could just shoot in the studio. And I walked into Mike, who is my boss, the president here at Amazing Studios. I walked into his office and I said, Mike, we've been approached by a vocal band to do a music video for them, and I want to do something really, really cool. Can I have permission to take the boys, and go make something really, really cool? And Mike is really cool. He every now and then lets us do work for way below what we're valued at, or in some cases free. And just kind of play and have fun. So we went back to Transit and we said, hey, I'll tell you what, if you let us have control of the visuals and the story here, we'll produce for you guys something pretty incredible. So we started doing our research. We listened to the song, I don't know how many times, which it's incredible. It's been a month now. I probably listened to the song 500 times at this point, and right. I still enjoy it. I don't know about you, Cliff.
Yeah, I do. It's for the real one who may know of the song. It's a cover of, was it Ella Henderson?
Yes.
Who did it? She's like a
British Got Talent.
Yeah, Britain's Got Talent star.
Mm-hmm.
And she did it, and her version is almost, I don't want to call it country, but it's almost like a sultry rock kind of thing. Transit rearranged it as this kind of soaring,
almost power ballad.
A cappella power song. Really beautiful arrangement.
Yeah, absolutely gorgeous. So, listen to it over and over and started thinking, okay, where is the location that can really capture the essence of this song that we're trying to tell? And then I remembered from my days in school, Greenville, South Carolina. And so we just started doing some research, picked it as a location, and went to Transit and said, hey, let's shoot there. And they said, oh, real bummer. We're not going to be able to make this happen. Our schedules aren't working out. We're going to have to cancel the music video.
And it is worth noting, not to interrupt, but it is worth noting that as much as it is exciting for us to be able to take on a project like this and say, well, we don't need a huge budget. We can use the things we already have. I would say that ultimately that did work against us. And as great as it is for us to be able to offer that and to be able to work with clients like Transit, because for us it isn't about money, it's about the piece. Unfortunately, in the production world, money is necessary. It's the old triangle. You can need money, time, money, time, talent. You can have any two of those. Where we ended up on this one, I feel like, is that we had no money and no time. We had
And
an
we'll go
incredibly
over, yeah.
right. And this is just a little bit of foreshadowing before we move on. But we had plenty of talent from the group, from our staff, from everyone else. But we did not have the time or money necessary to do something like this in the way that we would like. And I do think it kind of bit us in the butt in the end, but we still got a high quality product out of it.
Yeah. So we got the word, can't do it. I reached back out and said, hey, can we, we're offering you something really awesome for free. I mean, really, do you want to say no? And they heard back, well, I'll tell you what if we could do it tomorrow?
Yeah.
So
This was on a Monday.
this was a Monday, and basically they wanted to do it on Monday night is when they actually told us that, and they said, can we do it Wednesday?
Yeah.
And so we had a day
Yeah.
to storyboard, prep, get everything together, and get down to Greenville. So we ended up putting you, who DP'd this one.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing we should talk about more in detail in a minute, but we kind of switched up roles now that, Peter for a long time was here essentially by himself on the production side. He, Mike handled production before Peter came. Once Peter came on, the company was still fairly small. Peter handled production basically on his own for about a year and a half. And since I've come on, we've really worked together at saying, well, now we have multiple voices, we have multiple bodies. We don't have to make everybody do everything all the time, which we come from an indie background, so we're used to that, but it's always better. I think you get a better product when you don't. So this is the first one that we've tried with myself being the DP and Peter just strictly directing.
Which we'll get into. I think there were a lot of pros to that, and I think there's some cons and some things that we'll need to address.
Right.
But we managed to pull everything together. We sent Cliff down early to location scout. We knew roughly which locations we wanted to be in, but we wanted to make sure that we had the availability and all of that. We made a lot of phone calls that day before, getting permits for the various locations that we were going to be in, getting permissions.
Which, remember that will come back in a few
That will
moments.
come back in a few moments. And then the next morning, we hopped in cars. The rest of the crew hopped in cars and went down. So
Now, here's another thing to mention just really quick. When I did do this location scout, I had actually never been to downtown Greenville. Apparently, if you live in the South, it is like the place to go, and I had only been...
It's the Dubai of the South.
the Dubai of the South.
Without like all the money or the nice cars.
Yeah, I had only been to Greenville once for a concert, and I had never been downtown. So when I'm seeing these locations, I'm seeing them for the first time at night. No idea of lighting, no idea of how all this stuff is going to play out, which was an interesting challenge for us to have. So that's just something to keep in mind as we move forward.
So, all right. So let's kind of let's go back and talk over the pre-production now.
Right.
And then we'll move into production. Pre-production. I'm going to say the first thing that worked was that everyone was very flexible.
Yeah.
We had, I think, between you and I, we had good understanding that we needed to move quickly on things. If a decision was made, we needed to stick to it and press forward.
And Transit themselves were very flexible and very trusting to essentially, they came to us with some preconceived ideas that I don't think we ended up using almost any of it.
No, we didn't.
But they came to us and basically said, well, look, you guys know what you're doing in this, you know what we want, just get us what we want out of it and we'll trust you in the form, which is awesome of them.
Yeah. So, I think things that worked was the flexibility. Things that didn't work, we did not have enough time.
Yeah.
There were a lot of things. For instance, we didn't have a detailed storyboard.
Right.
We had
We didn't even have a shot list. We didn't.
No, we had a location list, and within that location list, we had a couple of, okay, we want these shots, but due to the constrained time, we did not have time to sit down and I should have been there for a location scout. It schedule wise and deadline wise didn't work out for me to get down there, but it was detrimental that you and I were not there together in
Yeah.
Greenville.
And one thing I would say to you that also that we're learning, you are much better at flying by the seat of your pants. I'm much more of a planner. I am much more of a, for example, when we did our July 4th shoot, I spent the night before that shoot rigorously shot listing the entire piece, talking it over on the phone with you, trying to figure out every obstacle before we hit it. That's really how I operate. And I don't think that it's a matter of better or worse. You through the work that you've done over the past couple of years have become much more skilled at just kind of running into it, which I think is a valuable skill to have. But when you have those two mindsets trying to work together, I think it produces some problems. I think that was one area that we didn't really because we hadn't done this yet. We hadn't done switched up these roles before. That was one area that I felt like we kind of learned we need to look at and make sure in the future that we're more on the same page.
Yeah. Something that did work. Timing wise, it actually worked out well because we had a set of Zeiss CP2s in.
Thanks to Carl Zeiss.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Zeiss. We were demoing the lenses. We are getting ready for a major project that I can't tell you about until after the announcement is made in the next couple of weeks. But for a major project, we're looking to purchase a set of compact primes. And Zeiss was kind enough to demo a couple of them to us.
And I do want to say, I was kind of, that was kind of my project, was going out and trying to get us some lenses to demo because, I mean, even renting a set of compact primes is several $100s. And when you don't have a specific project on hand for that, it's hard to justify. We've rented lenses for projects in the past, but when you're just kind of between and you're testing and there's no money on the table yet, it's difficult.
Yeah.
We reached out to a lot of people, and Zeiss was the only company.
We reached out to Canon.
Yeah.
We reached out to
various rental services, various houses that sell the equipment. Zeiss was the only company who said, look, we have these two demo lenses. They had a 50 and a 21. The woman I talked to said, they're literally sitting here on my desk. Give me your info and I'll send them to you for 2 weeks, which was just incredibly helpful. And ultimately, I think sold us on the lenses.
Yeah, I'm sold. I just the CP2s are fantastic lenses. So having those really did make a big difference on the final outcome.
Yeah.
I was more than impressed with the Zeiss lenses. So I would put that in the category of a win.
Absolutely.
In pre-production. Anything else from pre-production? Thoughts that you have? We talked about the storyboarding. We talked about that.
I mean, it was a lack of really time to plan. I didn't, and this is something a mark I will take on myself. I did not have a clear idea of your vision. And again, that comes down to time. We ran through the song one time, and then I got in a car and drove for 4 hours. So we just ran out of time, but I should have been more insistent on making sure that I have my head clearly wrapped around your vision and all of the needs. I think it's easy and I think kind of what we did was we got caught up in let's make sure we have the cameras packed, let's make sure we have everything charged, we got caught up in the technical stuff, and it's very easy to get blinded by that.
So going forward, what's a good way to help you understand my vision?
I mean, honestly, I think it comes down to just sitting down and having greater conversations about it. Very much like we have with this big project that we can't talk about. Even in the earliest stages of that's a project that I'll be directing and that Peter will be shooting. We came in and worked on the board for 3 or 4 hours, just making sure that everything was what it needed to be. That kind of thing, and really getting in there and being able to throw out ideas. Okay, how's this for an opening shot? Well, that doesn't work because blank, et cetera, et cetera.
So
is a big
would it
part
have been
of it.
more helpful for you, knowing the time constraint that we had, would it have been more helpful for you to have not gone to Greenville the night before, stayed here, and you and I shot listed, working off of pictures, or would it have still been good for you to go to Greenville?
Purely from a creative stance, yes, it would have been better for me to be here. From a human being stance, no, because I mean, that would have been, it was already a 9.5 hour day, and that would have involved getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning for a drive and then driving back that night.
Which is what I did.
Right, right. And then that's something when we get into production that we'll talk about. The way the schedule just worked out was bonkers. But thankfully everyone was really awesome and pulled it together. So yeah, from a creative side, just taking that more time I think would have been big. And again, I'll put that on myself that I didn't really realize what was happening for myself just as a creative. I just wasn't as aware of that as I should have been. So yeah, just time is, I mean, in any project like this, time is the number one thing. And it's something that I feel like from a client perspective, it's something we have to be more insistent on.
Yeah.
Because it's awesome for us to, it makes us feel great when a client comes to us and we say, yeah, we can do that tomorrow. But, and this is a conversation you and I have had before, if we are going to act as professionals, we have to demand from ourselves and those that we work with a professional level of production. And part of that is when somebody says, can you be in another state to shoot a full music video tomorrow? We go, no, not to produce, not to make sure that everything is handled the way it needs to be handled.
Yeah.
So I think that's just, and that's a hard lesson for
Anyone.
and us
But
as a
especially,
company.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's move into production. I'm going to talk through the day a little bit, how it transpired. We got there around 8:30 on the first location.
Brian and I had been there about 30 minutes before that, getting set.
Yeah, and the plan was that at 10 o'clock, transit would show up. So we had an hour and a half to get everything set up. And you and I were going to talk about some of the specific shots and some of the locations that you'd seen the night before. And we were going to kind of get our game plan, which we did. We were good and ready to go. Danielle came, who was our makeup artist. She's
Shout out to her. She did an incredible job.
Danielle nailed it and was Johnny on the spot all day. I need to find out if she has like a website or something, and we can put links below.
Yeah, when you watch the video, you would never know that it was 95 degrees out and completely humid and just miserable. And yeah, Danielle just absolutely nailed it, and the way she kept everyone looking great all day, just fantastic. And that's one of those things that I feel like often and this is a plus on our side. I think that's one of the things that often gets forgotten is the importance of a makeup artist when you're doing something like this.
Yep.
And I think it was very smart of you to insist, no, we have to have that person because it made a huge difference.
Yeah. So we were all there, and then 10 o'clock rolls around, and Transit's not there. We give them a call. They're still an hour out.
Yeah.
They ended up showing up around 11:15, so we were an hour behind already on our schedule when they showed up, and we needed it to be done. We knew that we had probably 6 o'clock deadline before we were going to start losing the light that we needed and before rain was supposed to start rolling in.
And also for our reservation on the pavilion, which is, when you watch the video, that is where the video begins, that gorgeous old building.
Yeah, the white pavilion there in downtown Greenville.
Yeah, part of the Peace Center.
So they show up, and I mean, we have to do makeup, we have to do wardrobe, we have to get. I mean, there's a lot that has to happen before we can start rolling cameras.
Right.
So we instantly started improvising. We had them do Alex's makeup first, so we could take him away and shoot his sequence. In the stairwell,
which is where problems started.
Which is where our first problem started.
Yeah.
We had permits for everything that we thought we needed permits for. Turns out there's a staircase in downtown Greenville in a back alley that you need a permit to film in.
Apparently so.
Yeah, and we did not have one.
Now, on the plus side, I will say that is some of my favorite footage. Is Alex on the steps. We did 2 angles.
Yep.
Both with the 50. Yeah, both with the 50.
Yeah, it was the 50.
Simply lit. It just looks great. But what we didn't apparently take into consideration was that we were using a small handheld Bose speaker for playback. And I guess everyone in the surrounding area was hearing it in those buildings. And we very quickly had a angry administrator come flying towards us.
Yep. First question was, do you have a permit? So the answer was no. Fortunately, we made it through our second run through of the song from the second angle before she came out.
Well, actually, she was awesome. She came out about halfway through that shot and didn't stop us. So thank you, ma'am, because that never happens.
No. So we had to wrap that location very quickly and move on back to the pavilion. It took probably about an hour and a half for Danielle to do all the makeup. So it was about 12:30.
Yeah, and she was working. She was working
I mean,
hard.
yeah, she was working overtime. So about 12:30 before we were able to actually get the cameras rolling on our first big scene.
Right.
Then we wrapped that scene. The next thing we shot was we went up to shoot Carl.
Well, actually, let's mention on the production there were kind of two sides to the pavilion production. There was all of our lockdown stuff, and then there was all of our Ronin stuff. Which Ronin is where we for anyone who doesn't know, it's the DJI Ronin. It's a gimbal system similar to the Movi. That's what we use on a lot of our shoots, and it was a big part of your vision for this shoot. I am not as experienced with the Ronin as you are, and actually kind of learned the Ronin on that shoot, which we'll talk about. There were some issues there, but so after we shot off our lockdown stuff, we threw the camera on the Ronin and started popping off a few more shots. There's actually an entire intro shot that we had designed, partially chosen that pavilion for that intro shot that got cut.
I'll tell you what, if you're watching this on YouTube, we'll put that clip on the end of this video. So either listen to the whole thing or just go skip to the end if you're getting bored at some point. And you could see it's a really cool dynamic shot that we got. It just ended up being a little bit too cool and a little too dynamic to work with the actual piece.
It's a good lesson in our not letting our camera nerdery get in the way of, again, kill your darlings. Letting our technical love get in the way of the actual product, because it was a dual operator, remote controlled, big Ronin shot that I was happy because I didn't screw it up. And so we were all kind of really proud of that shot. But then early into the edit, I just said, no, this is...
So let's talk about that, because what started happening was this. We got through that shot, and that worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
But it became pretty apparent pretty quickly, especially as we were trying to do the low angle circle around the group, that your lack of experience on the Ronin was hindering our ability to get the shot.
There are two big parts of what makes the Ronin difficult to shoot with. One is just weight.
With the cam, we had a Red Epic. We were shooting on the Red for this shoot. Between the Red, the Zeiss lens, the Ronin itself, which is heavy, you're probably carrying about almost 40 pounds.
Yeah, and I mean, I am not a big dude, and I haven't been shooting with it for a year, as you have. The other element that makes it difficult is it requires a different way of thinking. It doesn't, at least for me, it is not intrinsic. The way you're used to shooting, even if you shoot glide cam, which I have a glide cam, or even if shooting other Steadicam methods, the Ronin is a little bit different because you're not just worried about your up and down and left to right. You're also, the way you tilt the Ronin itself controls the movement of the gimbal and the movement of the head on the gimbal, and there's a ton of settings for that and all sorts of stuff. So you're thinking in multiple different directions at once. The biggest lesson I learned, and this was something that when we were doing the circular shot, I noticed, when you would show me the angle that the shot that you wanted, it was tighter. And when I would set up that shot, it was almost impossible to keep everyone framed correctly in that tight notion. I ended up handing it off to you to do that shot, which you were a beast on that shot. I don't think I've ever seen you in so much pain by the end of a take. But I noticed when you did it, you took about 5 steps back, and you made the shot significantly wider, which, one, looked better. I actually liked the shot better, but two, it makes the translation movement with the Ronin much easier to handle. And I think that's something that is probably just hardwired in you now. You just know when you pick up the Ronin, I've got to be this far back in order to get that shot. And we also ran into that, which you were about to get to, when we shot Carl's his single, walking down the street singing. That was another thing, that when I would frame up and show you the frame, it was tighter. When I handed it off to you, you took 4 or 5 steps back, which made that entire shot much easier to accomplish, and also gave you more parallax and more movement in the edge of the frame, and it made for a better shot. So that was a lesson that I just had to learn, that that's on me. I just didn't know. and I have since used the Ronin and actually had good luck with it because I was able to watch what you do and so on and so forth. So I think a lesson to take away there would be I had seen you use the Ronin on other shoots, but in very different circumstances. And, for something like that, I mean, now we've kind of had that experience, so it's hard to say in the future, but for a piece of gear like that where it is a different beast, having an operator in that who has used it in that circumstance, and if I'm need to be trained or whatever, I need to be humble enough to say I don't know this. I need a whole bunch of training, which we had talked about previous to the shoot, but again, the timeline didn't allow it to happen. So again, that's another place where time was biting us in the butt.
Yeah. So it ended up being that we kind of had a dual rule on any shots that had the Ronin, especially as we got towards the end of the day and fatigue was starting to set in.
Yeah.
Because my experience with the Ronin is much greater, and so I can fight through that fatigue. Whereas newer operator, fresher set of arms, the fatigue really affected you quite a bit
Right.
more. As we were getting towards the end of the day. So after we shot Carl's bit, we went on and we shot Amy on the bridge, and then we shot her on the walkway.
Which the bridge is probably my favorite shot.
It colored up beautifully.
And it's also one of the funniest because we really couldn't see what we were doing. I think
Nothing.
we almost, for a couple of those, we ended up dual operating it because we were both so exhausted at that point, and we could hardly see the screen.
it was 100 degrees out.
Yeah,
at
it
that
was
point.
It was miserable.
It was I was drenched with sweat. I don't know if did Brandon get anything behind the scenes of that. I don't know even know if he did. But
I don't know,
that bridge is probably the hardest part for me.
There's a photo of me that kind of went like baby viral, of me sitting on a rock with the red, and if you look at that photo, you see pure misery because that was the end of the day, where we're getting to with the waterfall stuff. That was a lesson in exhaustion.
Yeah, so got those things. Then we went down to the waterfall. There was an issue with the waterfall because we had a whole plan leading in, and I had you checking locations. And when you got there the night before, you went to the location that we were going to shoot, and there was a new sign. And this sign said, "Do not do exactly what we wanted to do."
Pretty much.
So we were going to have them go stand at the top of the waterfall on some rocks that are there. It's a beautiful setting with the bridge behind, and there was signs saying don't go out on the rocks. Yeah. So we had to change up our location. So we ended up going beneath the waterfall, which honestly I thought worked.
Yeah.
We found a nice little platform that somebody who watched the video commented, it looks like it's a stage. Like it looks like the whole thing is on a sound stage and we faked it.
Yeah.
So kudos to us, I guess. So we went to this location. And we shot all the close-ups, then we shot the wides, and then we wrapped for the day. However, when we got back in post, I noticed an issue, and that was in all of our close-ups, we wanted a handheld look for these shots because we wanted that movement. But I was noticing that in addition to the handheld, we were also on a couple of the shots getting what almost looked like jitter.
Yeah.
Talk me through that a little bit.
Yeah, that was a thing that wasn't intended, but that was one of those matters. And this is something we can, in kind of an overall, talk about more the logistics of the day. But the point, by the time we got to the point that we were doing those final close-ups, we were both so exhausted.
We'd gone, I guess, from 8:30 that morning. It was almost 6 o'clock that night. We'd gone that whole stretch without food.
Without a break.
I mean, it was nonstop.
Except to move from one place to another. It was nonstop, which I think was a mistake.
Yes.
And I was so physically tired that my muscles were shaking during the shot. I was bracing the camera against my body to try and keep as much of it out as I could, which, to be fair, the Red Epic is not itself great for hand holding. Just that the form factor is a monster for that sort of thing. But I had it kind of cradled against me to try to keep out of it, and still I was shaking so hard that you can actually see it in the shot. I tried to stabilize that when we got in post, but because they're close-ups, I was using warp stabilizer, and it actually started basing the stabilization on their eyes and on their face, so the head would stay in the right place and the background would warp around.
It was crazy.
It's a really cool effect if we ever need to do like a trippy
Acid,
Guy
like
Ritchie.
Willy Wonka.
If we ever need to do like a Guy Ritchie movie or something, that's a great way to do it. But yeah, that was one of those elements, and that's something that we've talked about. And it was also, end of the day, none of us were thinking about it was end of the day, we're on rocks, trying not to fall with, $20,000 worth of gear in our hands. It was just one of those areas where the shakiness of the shot became the lowest priority in our minds. And again, that's a place where the technical details of the shoot got in the way of the craft of it.
Yeah. I think if I had it all do over, I probably, knowing the fatigue, what that had set in, would have brought a monopod down.
Or at least a shoulder rig.
And then faked the movement a little bit more that we wanted because the fatigue, and I didn't realize until we were back in post how much it was affecting everybody, but especially you, and how that would affect. Now we were able to get some of it stabilized. Some of the shots that were really bad, we just ended up not using and replacing with others.
And honestly, I don't think the shakiness is a detriment to the piece. I really felt like if it was, we wouldn't have used it.
Right.
We would have done something about it. But it kind of lends a that entire end sequence was designed to feel set apart from the rest of the piece, and that's the first time we really have handheld, honestly.
It is.
There were some other handheld shots, but they don't look handheld. And that's the first time we have something that feels handheld, and I think it kind of sets that apart. So in the end, it kind of ended up working, but it was a lesson for us on the production side.
Yep. And that was kind of the wrap. Honestly, I felt like our strongest point in this, and this is where we had the time back, was post.
Yeah.
I feel like the post work on this was about seamless.
Yeah.
Took us about 4 or 5 days to edit together the first rough cut.
Which this was a weird one for me. I love this kind of editing, and for anyone who doesn't know, I'm the principal editor here. I do most of the editing here at the studio.
I'm the principal director. He's the principal editor.
Right. And I had a brain block on this one. I just had one of those moments where I
noticed that.
When I first sat down with the footage, I just couldn't make anything of it in my head.
And I'm sitting there like, oh, come on, let's get it in. It looks so pretty.
Yeah.
I want to see it.
Yeah, and I just kind of had to say, just give me time. And I kind of would come back to it between other stuff for a few days. That was we could have had a rough cut in a couple of days if I had, been able to jump on it immediately. But it was just one of those things. Sometimes, that's just the creative process. Sometimes it's just slower. And in this case, it was just weird. It's just how it worked. Talking about post, I think one of the real strengths of this piece was the color grading.
Yeah. And why don't you talk to us about the process?
Yeah,
how did we get the grade on this one? And I know the process was a little different.
It was. It's very different than what I've done in the past. We're here at the studio. We're kind of, my technique as an editor is I use the best tool for the best situation. I think that's one of the biggest things is there is no Swiss Army knife in this business. So we use multiple different color grading tools depending on what it calls for. I've used SpeedGrade in the past. I've had a lot of issues with SpeedGrade 2015, the CC update, so I haven't been using it lately, unfortunately. Now, the Lumetri color that's built into Premiere is incredible. I've actually used that quite a bit. It's kind of my new go-to on more corporate type stuff because it's simple and it's there and it renders immediately. It's fantastic. But actually something I brought with me to the studio was using Magic Bullet. It's something the studio had used in the past, but it wasn't really Magic Bullet looks specifically. But it wasn't a tool that we had anymore, and it's something that I'm experienced in, and that's what we used to grade on this piece. We actually ended up using their film emulation, taking all the grain out, but just doing a base emulation, a stock emulation on the piece. And how I did the grade was if you watch the video at the very end on YouTube, it goes to Transit sitting in the studio and talking about what the process, and thanking everybody and so on. And for that, when you see that, the little bit of movie magic, I guess, we were actually still not even halfway through editing the piece at that point. The piece wasn't done. But they wanted a still to be on the screen behind them. So I graded up and exported a still from the video. So when I was grading it, I was only worried about that one frame. So I just perfected the grade for that one single frame and wasn't worried about playing it because I was like, I'll redo all this later. It doesn't matter. Well, the side effect in that was I was so focused on just doing that one thing that I was able to craft a better grade. And then it just became a matter of going from that, basically that master frame, which is a grading technique, doing a master frame and matching. But we were then able to take that and apply it to different parts of the video and just tweak the grade. But we were coming from look first, not footage first, which tends to be my go-to. Is I look at the footage and I say, well, how can I make a grade work with this? In this case, it was the opposite way around. And thankfully, being we're working with Red RAW footage, we have the flexibility to change elements of the footage to suit the grade. For example, we shot this with an ND filter. A lot of the stuff we were using a matte box and an ND filter for the stuff in the pavilion, and it was wonderful, but it gave it this kind of warm orange tint from the filter. Well, in a normal circumstance, that would kind of be what you got. With the red is so flexible, we were able to go in and dial in how much of that orange, added hue we wanted, and we ended up using that. If you notice, a lot of stuff in the pavilion has that golden tint.
Yeah, that warmer, almost a sepia.
Yeah,
tone.
because we ended up using it to our advantage. So yeah, that is an element, a part of the piece that I feel like was really strong for us.
Yep. And then, of course, the review process. We brought in Transit. They watched it. They loved it. There was like one or two minor comments.
But this is a good lesson too. When you're working with something like music, I mean, Peter and I are musicians. We know about music. We both play some music.
Yeah, I mean, I play the piano. You play the drums.
Yeah, but we're certainly not, trained, studied.
We're not Dustin.
Right. We have a gentleman in our studio, Dustin Owens, who is an incredible musician.
Yeah, he writes all of our original soundtracks.
Yeah, he's a beast. For giving you an idea, we were in the studio one day and Dustin goes, I want to get a violin. And we're like, oh, do you play violin? And he goes, well, I mean, not yet, but give me 2 weeks. And I was like, I hate you.
Yeah.
I hate your soul.
Yeah. Those art department guys.
But because of that, there are things going on in the music track that you and I didn't even recognize, that we wouldn't have thought of. When we brought Transit in, they said they noticed a couple of our cuts and said, well, actually, you're cutting to the wrong people. The way the progression of the song goes is this way. So by being... I guess it's part of being humble as artists and not saying, oh, no, we know best. By listening to Transit, listening to the people who knew better than we did, we tweaked it, and it made it for a better edit. It actually made a significantly better edit thanks to their feedback.
Yep.
So that was really good.
Yep. And then after that, it was the final color pass and export. I mean, it was really a pretty straightforward post process. I felt like all people worked together. The art department worked great with us. They designed. Transit hasn't really had a clean design for their artwork yet, and so they sat down. They looked at all Transit's existing and started putting together a good theme, and that's where we got our opening title slate from, which hopefully we should be seeing on all of Transit's videos from this point going forward, is that design. They optimized the YouTube channel, got everything. The art department did a great job on this one.
Yeah.
And I feel like our post process was solid.
Yeah, absolutely. That was and also there's going to be, by the time you're hearing this, it's already done, I would assume, but there's actually going to be a big reveal party for the video to show it to Transit's friends and family members and that kind of stuff, which I haven't been a part of. I don't know if we've done many of those in the past, but that's going to be exciting. So that's a cool part of the process.
And that actually brings up something that this was the first time we had a big emphasis on the behind the scenes video.
Absolutely.
Brandon came along, who's our social media director here at the studio, and he directed the behind the scenes, and I was actually surprised at how little it got in my way.
Yeah.
I've always been afraid to bring behind the scenes guys on set with me because I'm always like, well, they're just gonna be in the way. I don't have time. We did a little bit with the 4th of July piece, but this was our first big, a client is there piece that we did it with, and honestly, it was pretty seamless.
Yeah,
and I feel like
job.
it elevated the product that we gave to Transit, because in addition to the video, they also had this behind the scenes video that they can use that helps to really show the elevated production level that they use.
Right, we're in a content driven world now, and I think for a lesson for studios such as ourselves, whether we're doing for hire pieces like this or even original work, is figuring out the way to optimize how much content we are producing from one thing.
Yep.
And I mean, it's been a lesson for us, and we not only are we getting a music video, we have the behind the scenes. We have a podcast about it, and we're able to then take it and teach other people based on our mistakes and our successes. And
Yep.
I think that's something we've just really started to explore. But I think it's going well, and I'm excited about it.
Yep. If I were to give this project an overall grade, I'd still give it an A-. I feel like overall the team worked really well together. There was great collaboration throughout. The one thing that really we have to come back to on this is time.
Yeah.
If we had this all to do over again, I would not shoot a Wednesday after finding out Monday night that we had to shoot. Especially for something as big and as artistic as a music video.
And especially in a location that's 8 hours worth of driving away.
Right.
I mean, that for me is a big takeaway, and this is something I actually, you and I haven't even discussed off air yet, but for me, there was I think our most well-intended mistake that was, it made for a beautiful production, but increased a lot of problems, was Greenville. Going to Greenville was a great idea in terms of the look. We got, these beautiful locations. It made the piece better, but it made the process of making the piece significantly more difficult. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a lesson for us to just rein in our ambition sometimes and say, yes, there's a location for this that would be perfect, but can we find a location that is, equally as good, that isn't going to make our lives that much more difficult in the process? Because I think the biggest problem with this was how we ended up, and some of it wasn't our fault, but basically 9.5 hours without food, without a break. I just am the type of person, I don't know if it's there's diabetes in my family and things like that. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but if I don't eat, I actually physically start breaking down very quickly, more quickly than most people, which is part of the problem that we encountered. And frankly, 9.5 hours without a break is how people get hurt.
Yep.
And that's where you start having big problems.
Yeah, and that falls on me as the director. I got rushed, and I got a little panicky that we were so far behind from the get-go that I pushed everybody. And in future, I need to make sure that the safety of the crew comes first.
And it's the thing of if we'd had 2 days to shoot this, wouldn't have been a problem. Mm-hmm. If we had done 2 6-hour days with breaks, or 2 6 hours of shooting with breaks in there, it wouldn't have been nearly the monster that it was. Yeah. For us on the crew.
Well, this has been a good conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's definitely some takeaways. There's some. I still feel like we have a great product.
For sure.
And
for sure.
And I'm excited. It was good working with you on this one. Brian was obviously a huge help. Danielle was fantastic.
Yeah, but we should shout out Brian gaffed.
Yeah, Brian gaffed the entire thing.
With nothing.
Yeah.
We were traveling super light.
Mm-hmm. We gave him nothing to work with, and he did a phenomenal job at making nothing really something.
Yeah, he really did.
So, all right, if you're on YouTube, links below to the video, to the behind the scenes, to Transit. There's going to be all kinds of information down there. If you are on iTunes, go to YouTube, where all those links are.
Yep.
Please subscribe, follow us.
Yes, absolutely.
Follow me on Instagram. Follow Cliff on Twitter, Instagram.
I am at Cliff Baumgartner. Peter on Instagram is Peter the Director.
Yeah. And we look forward to talking to you next time.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Have a good week.
Bye.